Australians of Reddit, what is the scariest encounter you've had with one of the native animals? I had just come home after a long bicycle ride. I took my shoes off and just forgot to bring them inside afterwards. 2 days later I was about to go on another bicycle ride, so needed my shoes. I put my left one on with no problems, but felt something a little squishy when putting my foot into my right shoe. I immediately took my foot out to discover it to be covered in at least 100 baby spiders, and a large red-black spider came scuttling out of the shoe. Don't leave your shoes outside, or at the very least check them, unlike me. American here. My wife had us bring home some chairs we found on the curb. My shoes got taken off and sat next to the new furniture. The next day I put them on and it feels like I have a rock in my shoe. I take it off and shake it. A huge pastel spider falls out. It was yellow and pink, which means whatever kind it was lived in flowery areas. I had stood on this thing with all 220 pounds of my weight and it wasn't even harmed. I bashed it with the shoe 3 times. It just kept walking. Finally I put the shoe top of it and stood on the shoe with both feet, and that finally did it. I don't know what kind it was, but clearly if had bitten me I'd be a superhero by now. Lived in the outback. Was just minding my own business walking past the local cinema and a 6-foot emu came running out from behind a tree and nearly knocked me down. Scared the absolute crap out of me. Follow-up, emus were not supposed to be in the township. There was a fence to keep them out, so town services had to forcibly evict it. They achieved this by driving up close to it, throwing a noose around its neck, quickly winding up the windows and slowly escorting it out of town. Bad idea. They are surprisingly strong and it kicked in the whole side of the vehicle in the process. They must have been a rebel faction from the Great Emu War. While I was mowing, saw a snake. Thought it was a red-bellied black snake. Get them all the time. So I took a stick and hit the ground near it to scare it off. Ducking thing arced up, hissed and charged at me. I took off. It was a tiger snake. Came home from work and went to step outside to enjoy the garden when I noticed an intense buzzing. I looked down and there's a spider wasp and a huntsman spider having a Godzilla, King of the Monsters showdown, wrestling all over the patio area. The spider wasp stung the huntsman into submission and dragged it over to a hole in the wall. I later learned that the spider wasp lays her eggs in the barely living body and uses it as an incubator. Nice. In another huntsman incident, the one I keep in my garage dropped into my lap from the sun visor in my car as I reversed out of my driveway. I screamed for a bit before scooping him up and popping him back in the garage. I warned him not to get in my car again. Anyone watching would have found a grown man lecturing a fucking huge spider a bit weird. I do generally like them though, hence not killing it. I've also been chased by an emu while cycling a few times. They're ducking deranged. Came home after 2 weeks away. My parents picked me up, unloaded my suitcase, loaded it up themselves, then left on holidays. That night, I was sleeping on my stomach, and a possum came in through the window and landed on the soles of my feet. I'm guessing he had pushed through the flat screen while I was away and had been sleeping in my room. All I knew is something big and hairy landed on me. I lashed out, and he went flying across the room. I left pretty quick and slept on the couch. Another one didn't scare me, but the wife. I saw 2 or 3 baby huntsman spiders about the size of a pinhead outside my bedroom. I saw maybe a dozen more in my bedroom. Then I walked into my ensuite. Huntsmans have about 200 babies at a time, and the remaining 185 were all in there hanging out. The wife made me go out at 11 PM for bug spray, and still didn't sleep in the bedroom for another 4 nights. When I was younger our basement wasn't sealed properly, so it was like the Wild West of Spidderdom when you were down there trying to watch TV. Wolf spiders everywhere trying to fight for dominance against giant brown house spiders, and we were the civilian casualties. It took my brother getting bit on the balls by a hobo spider before my parents finally sealed it all up and we went on a spider crusade. Woke up in the middle of the night and walked half asleep into the kitchen for a drink. Turned the light on and am greeted by hundreds and hundreds of baby spiders, about the size of your pinky nail, on every surface of the kitchen. There were tiny webs like streamers cascading from the ceiling, and they were coming out of every crack and crevice like a ducking horror movie. I shut the kitchen door behind me to try and stop them infesting the rest of the house and sprayed the entire contents of the 4 cans of bug spray I had, both surface spray and flying insect spray. After the first can I had to keep exiting the room to breath, but I sprayed until I couldn't see anything moving anymore, and then contemplated going to buy more spray. I had to throw out every item of food that wasn't sealed and wash the entire kitchen contents, including the walls where hundreds of little black dots made up the mass grave of baby spider carcasses. I'm not afraid of spiders, and it's common here to often find bugs inside. We have a lot of bugs and our houses aren't generally sealed up very well, but damn, that was the stuff of nightmares. Still makes my skin crawl thinking about it. Have you considered moving to another country? A leech attached itself to the middle of my eyeball while I was hiking in the rainforest. My friends wanted to piss on it, or light a match over it, but neither solution seemed ideal. So I waited while it wiggled about, filled up with blood, and finally dropped off an hour later. The following week I went on a date with one of the guys I met on that hike, even though I still had a zombie eye from the leech bite 10 years on. Last year, he and I went back to the place where he first looked me in the eye with that leech wiggling about, and we were married in the rainforest with our friend standing by. Okay, school canoeing camp out on the Murray River 6+ hours from civilization. Taking a shit in a hole in the dark. Loud thumping behind me getting closer and closer and closer. Fucking kangaroos just seeing what's up. Best shit I ever had. Walking through long grass like a moron with friends. Accosted by a large brown snake. Turns out I can run pretty fast. Dad clearing weeds out the back of my parents' house. Accosted by a large brown snake. Fastest I have ever seen that move. Neighbor knocks on our door. Tell us he just saw a large brown snake go into our yard. Dad goes to look, accosted by a large brown snake. Neighbor runs it over as he is backing out the driveway. At friend's house. His dad starts getting excited. Accosted by a large brown snake on the front lawn. Kills it with a shovel in some stubby shorts and thongs. Way too casual about it. Largest, thickest snake I've seen in person to this day. Old boy just chopped it into 3 bits with a tiny shovel. Basically, you don't have to look far for a poisonous snake. Hubby and a couple of mates were swimming in the dam in their jocks when someone yelled out crocodile, but it was an 8 feet black snake swimming out after them on top of the water. Hubby went back to the gum tree to get his clothes, and the black snake had curled up next to their pile of clothes. They walked about 2 miles back home in wet jocks, barefoot. The 3 of them went back on the tractor with a shotgun but couldn't find the snake. He also reckons he saw a black panther in the bush, but I'm skeptical. I was swimming bathing in a river when I saw a snake get into the water a few meters away. And it was coming towards me. And it could swim a lot better than I could. Now snakes are bad enough when you can run away, but can't really do that in this situation. So I pissed myself as the snake passed beside me and got out of the river on the other side. And then I decided swim time, and really all time in the bush, was over. In bed, felt something scutter over my chest. Turned on the light. Saw nothing. Then as I went to turn the light off, saw a giant ducking huntsman crawl under the mattress. I was so tired that I left it, but it still freaks me the duck out. Giant ducking huntsman. Just left it. I love how casual that is. I would be stripping to my undies, smearing ketchup war paint on my cheeks and grabbing my chopstick harpoon. My mother-in-law called me over to her house because she thought her cat had been bitten by a brown snake. She asked me to bring a shovel. I drove over and found the snake in the backyard. I whacked that thing as hard as I could 10 times with the flat side of a shovel. The snake reared up a couple times until it slumped into a heap, bleeding. I put the snake in a plastic bag and tied it shut. I placed it between my legs while wife drove to the vet to get the cat checked out. I brought the snake so the vet could identify if it was a brown snake. When we arrived, the vet had just completed surgery on a dog and laid the dog on the floor. They opened the bag and the snake slithered off the table onto the floor and started moving toward the dog. A nurse covered the snake with a box and got a hammer. She later smashed its head with the hammer. I seriously couldn't believe it was still alive after the beating I gave it. Now I know I should have hit it with the edge of the shovel, cutting its head. Driving on the freeway one night and I suddenly noticed this huge huntsman spider walking along the dashboard, very slowly making his way closer and closer to me. He was really big too, size of my hand. I'm not bothered by huntsmen, they're not venomous. But I didn't want it crawling out of sight and then coming up my leg, so I needed to get him out of the car. I should have pulled over, but I figured he'd just hide, so I rolled my window down, waited for him to get close and then somehow scooped him out the window. The most dangerous thing about it was that I was doing 100 kilometers an hour while swatting at a big hairy spider.